You're all very welcome, and absolutely delighted to have you guys here for our pre-Grand Slam celebration. We're going to win. No, they don't believe. You don't believe. Do you not believe? How many points? 20 points? 30 points? We're gonna get the job done, yeah? 15. 15, 12. Yeah, we'll take that. One will do, yeah. Joe Schmidt was saying 3-0 today. Yeah, we'll take that as well. Almost two Grand Slams in our history. We'll take a third no matter what the score is. So yeah, we'll kick off. Usually I do this big, long, elaborate introduction for our guests, but let's not bother. We've a lot to get on with, and we've kept it long enough. So would you please give a warm hand for the 42.E's Murray Kinsella and our special guest tonight, Mike McCarthy. How are you, fellas?
How are you, Gav?
I'm very well, thank you, Murray. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. Very excited.
Excited. Me too. Are you okay?
I'm good, yeah. We're having a few technical difficulties back there, but all sorted now. Thanks very much for having me.
No, absolutely. It's our pleasure. Sorry you have to sit in what essentially amounts to a basket, but we'll persevere.
It's pretty comfortable, actually.
Is it? Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Yeah. Are you confident ahead of the weekend?
Yeah, I'm very confident. Myself and Murray were having a conversation back there. Maybe I'm a little bit too confident, but I think getting off to the start we got off to against France, we saw how important it is to get off to a good start. Against Scotland last year we lost. So the heroics of that last kind of 41 phases in Paris, keeping the ball for 5 minutes and the drop goal just shows kind of the unity, the togetherness and in this squad going forward. And all the games have been pretty tight. We were talking about the Welsh game. And came down to the Stockdale interception. It could have gone the other way. The Scottish game, they bombed a few chances, but it's what a position to be in going for a Grand Slam. And I'm very jealous of some of those young guys like James Ryan and Andrew Porter and Jacob Stockdale. But it's a great opportunity and great chance for them going forward.
100%. We have had an interesting build-up, Mr. Kinsella.
Yeah, a few controversies. It was always going to be a pretty busy week anyway, but yeah, certainly with the assistant referee being stood down today, a couple of comments from Eddie Jones as well, just to warm things up a little bit more.
Let's get into them, right? So, firstly, Marius van der Westhuizen is he put himself in a difficult situation. So if you guys probably know, but what happened was he was brought into England's kind of training camp, I suppose, to he was pre-drinking. I mean, so he was brought into England's training camp because Eddie Jones and England wanted a match official from the Southern Hemisphere in order to help them with the breakdown, an area in which they've struggled in the last couple of weeks. But he was also the assistant referee or linesman for this weekend's game. So immediately he's putting himself in a compromised position. There was a bit of I think the term is controversy about it.
Yeah. Well, this is something that the Six Nations and World Rugby actually in particular have pushed. It's getting a referee into your camp. So Ireland have John Lacey in regularly, nearly for all their training sessions, to referee absolutely everything, so that the teams are obviously getting a benefit of having a referee there, keep their discipline. Joe Schmidt is huge on that. But also the referees are able to get their kind of almost coaching points across, so that when it comes to game day, the players understand the pictures that they want to see. And I mean, that's a very laudable kind of ploy. That's something that's really good for the game. There's going to be better understanding of the laws and everything. But I mean, this was just a little bit of madness, I think, from Marius van der Westhuizen to agree to go in. I don't know if it was Eddie Jones trying to get a bit of an advantage on it. They probably have got that now. They'll understand a little bit more what Angus Gardner does want. But I think World Rugby made the right decision. They've also taken on their own shoulders. They said, we've made a mistake here. I'm not sure exactly how the process worked, but yeah, it's better for the game because now we avoid any potential extra controversy.
Well, yeah, and but I suppose Eddie Jones put it down to World Rugby. He said, we went through World Rugby, we asked for a Southern Hemisphere official, and they gave us Van der Westhuizen, even though he is on duty this weekend. As you say, we're not quite sure of the exact process there and what went on, but Mike, I'd be interested from your point of view as a player going into this game. I presume it's more so something that fans would get annoyed by, like more so than players. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a distraction for the Ireland players, is it?
Oh, I don't think so, not at all. I mean, I think it's kind of been built up by the media, and I suppose World Rugby are just trying to cut. Yeah, this fella is driving us mad.
He's always at it. Clickbait shite.
No, the players honestly wouldn't even bother them. Maybe perhaps the coaches, but not the players. I mean, it's normal to get refs into training. I remember back even when I was playing in 2007, we used to get a ref in. I mean, I don't know why Ireland get a ref in because, I mean, Joe's scarier than the ref, so there's no need. But yeah, it's. I think they're just protecting themselves in case it came down to a very close decision or a controversial decision. They're just, I suppose, covering their backs, and at least they've done that.
I think the more relevant point is that Angus Gardner is the referee for this game. And I think we're going to see a different approach from him at the breakdown. Like, he very much wants to favour the attacking team. And in this championship, I was speaking to a referee during the week, and he said his kind of viewpoint has that there's almost been a race for a low penalty count. The referees are actually competing against each other to have a low penalty count. And I think that's apparent in the game. Like, a lot of the turnovers, there's a hand on the ground before they get on the ball. Quite obvious offences, like guys resting their knees on the tackled player. So I think it's going to be a lot stricter at the breakdown this weekend. I think Gardner will have watched that. He'll bring that Southern Hemisphere focus on the attacking play and bring that in a little bit more.
Jeez, I wish they'd done that in 2013 when we lost to the All Blacks, and they did. I think myself and Jack McGrath coming off our feet. So it was Nigel Owens anyway. So.
Yeah, it was. He's on the touch.
He's
on the touch.
Yeah, poor Nigel thought he had Paddy's weekend off, and all of a sudden he's been flown over, or he'll probably head up the road. But okay, so that's the first controversy dealt with. The second one, you'll all have been aware of this. Apparently, we're all scumbags. Well, I mean, firstly, it was a weird thing for any human being to say, I think, but like Eddie Jones described Ireland as the scummy Irish, he said of Wales that it's a shitty little place or something like that. Now, that's probably fair enough, actually, about... I'm only joking, Wales Online, for the love of God, don't quote me on it. But it was... I think, again, it's one of those things where... Like, it's... For me, as an Irish fan, I'm not remotely offended by that. It's nonsense. And I don't think the players will be particularly perturbed by it either. But it's more so from an English fan's perspective. It's a little bit embarrassing that your national team's head coach is saying weird fucking things about other countries.
Yeah, let's play the clip first.
Let's
have a look at the clip.
Yeah, we're trying to do that with England at the moment. So we've played 23 tests. We've only lost one test to the scummy Irish. I'm still dirty about that game. But we'll get that back. Don't worry. We've got them next year at home. We'll get them back. I think we're playing in fourth round of the Six Nations, so we'll get them back.
Yeah, the number of times he said we'll get him back, I think he realised what a mistake he'd made. Oh my God, what have I done here? For me, it's pretty clear that he's joking.
Yeah, of course.
The outrage was instant, as it always is now with these kind of things. Apparently, there was an Irish person in the crowd as well. So I don't know. Was it his misjudgment on his sense of humour? But yeah, when you're in that position as England head coach, you got to be very careful. I can't imagine Joe Schmidt making that kind of lighthearted joke when he's giving a leadership talk either.
No, certainly not. It was an firstly, I think it's just a case of Jones probably thinks he's funnier than he is, and he just made a comment thinking, "Oh, this is banter. They love this." But also it was a year ago, and it was second captains who dug this up on Twitter earlier. Our friends, the second captains, who tweeted the clip, and all mere hours later, or was it yesterday that clip came out? But hours later, the RFU were releasing a statement of apology. But it was just a fairly offhand tweet by them to bring it up, and all of a sudden there's this major.
I think he's a great character. I think it's great to have him, and the likes of Gats. Warren Gatland's pretty outspoken, and it's quite exciting as a fan and a supporter to see that kind of the coaches getting stuck into each other, and it just adds to the game, I think. From
a player's point of view, will any guys take motivation from that?
I'm sure they will. I mean, they're saying they're not, but surely any a lot of games at test level, it's all about 1%ers, and. What can you do to get a small advantage? So I don't think it'll be coming from the coaches. I really don't think they'll be driving that at all. They'll just be concentrating, like they said in media, they'll be concentrating on their own plan, their own preparation, what they've done all week of the Six Nations, and it's worked for them. But there's no doubt. Obviously, the players with social media now, they've seen the clip. They'll probably use it as motivation for themselves, if anything. But I wouldn't have thought it's been brought up in camp in a meeting.
As a player, Mike, how does it manifest itself as motivation? Because I find it hard to believe that you'd be buried at the bottom of a rock thinking, "Oh, Eddie Jones called us scumbags." Is it a pre-game thing that you'd be a little bit more, not psyched up, but would it drive you that tiny bit more if you're talking about the 1%?
It might drive you a little bit during the week, but as soon as kickoff comes, you're just tunnel vision. You're kind of into robot mode. You're not thinking about it. You're just trying to play the best you can, be as physical as you can. do what you're supposed to be doing as part of the game plan, and they won't even think about it come kickoff. But maybe during the week they'll have it in the back of their minds, and they might find it a bit annoying. But I think it's more outside. Yeah, I think he's pretty funny though. To be fair.
No, he's a good character. It was a misjudgment, and also it's on an event behind closed doors. You know what I mean? There is a context to it. He probably didn't realise he was being filmed. But anyway. That's the controversies dealt with. Well, we have a semi-controversy from Matt Williams that we'll deal with later. But let's get to the Ireland team. There's only one change to the 23, which is probably understandable. It's Ian Henderson is in for Devin Toner. Obviously, in that engine room now at second row, you've got two weapons, essentially. Is it the right decision for you, Murray, to bring Henderson back into the fold? Toner can probably consider himself a little bit unlucky.
Yeah, I actually thought Toner was going to start. I think... obviously two really good players. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it, but he's probably even looking a little bit longer term. Like, that's your Rugby World Cup starting second row, I think, those two guys. And James Ryan has been absolutely exceptional. Even the last day again, he did make a couple of handling errors, but he had like 15 carries, 14 tackles, hit 37 rucks as well. Unbelievably energetic performance across the board. So it's really interesting that he's now the first choice lock, that he's always going to be in the team no matter how those two rotate out. And it's a very, very settled Ireland team. Nice element of experience, and then you've got that youth. You've got James Ryan, Jacob Stockdale, Bundy Aki in his first Six Nations as well, although he is 27. And interesting to see Jordan Larmour on the bench as well, I think. It would have been tempting to go back to Fergus McFadden's experience, but he's stuck with Jordan Larmour for that impact, and possibly again looking a little bit more long term. Like, Larmour has a big role to play in this team moving forward. But Mike, what do you think of that second row, particularly in terms of the line out where Dev is?
Yeah, well, James Ryan, it's the rise he's had has been phenomenal. At 21 years old, I mean, he was not long ago. He was with the under-20s. They finished second place. They beat the All Blacks, and then he finds himself Champions Cup, starting all the Champions Cup games, performing really well against Montpellier, two massive packs, and that's probably what gave Joe the confidence to pick him against France. Then he goes and plays France in Paris. And I don't know what the stats were, but I remember watching the game saying, I can't believe how, I played France a few years ago and I think I had 3 or 4 carries. He's having like 17 carries. Yeah. That's just a phenomenal amount of carries. And all the other work he does, his defence, his breakdown, he's a beast of a man. His last year, when I was at Leinster my last year, he was injured with a hamstring injury. I was injured, so I was in injured gym with him for a lot, and he's a real specimen. He had to he's got a big frame, he had to bulk up a bit, and he's a very, very big man. He's got a huge future. But Hendy, I think Joe was alluding to today that was part of the plan, Hendy on the bench, and to bring him back for this England game. And great to have Dev, the experience on the bench, to come on and cause, really disrupt their line-out. Well, the good thing about Dev is they normally put him at the back of the line-out and line-out defence to force teams to win it off the front, because it's a lot more difficult to play off ball that's won at the front. So if you've got Dev 6'11" standing at the tail of the line-out, you're pretty sure they're not going to throw there. So yeah, but I think the key theme for this Ireland team at the moment is the strength and depth. I mean, you saw we started in the centres without Jared Payne. Robbie Henshaw unfortunately gets injured. Chris Farrell comes in, man of the match against Wales. And then the luxury of bringing in Gary Ringrose. Hadn't played a lot of rugby, and he was outstanding for a guy who hasn't played much rugby. It's the same. Tyke Furlong was out. Andrew Porter comes in, hasn't played much at tight head. He comes in and had a phenomenal game. And I suppose the key learnings from the 2015 World Cup, when that France game, then you lost the likes of Paul O'Connell. CJ Stander wasn't qualified, but Pete O'Mahony, Sean O'Brien, Johnny Sexton, Jared Payne, Tommy Bowe got injured very late. That would affect the All Blacks in a big way. So I think the key learnings were to build more strength and depth. And when you look at the squad now, it's phenomenal. And all the Six Nations is great. We've won the championship, fingers crossed, the Grand Slam. But looking further forward to the next World Cup, we're just looking like we're in a great position. Yeah,
like Joe's given 33 debuts since the last World Cup. Like that's more than any other nation apart from France in the Six Nations. Like Scotland are as low as 18 new debuts since then. So he has this reputation almost as a conservative selector, but he's been really focusing on bringing that depth through. And as you say, like to have James Ryan there at 21, Jacob Stockdale, we were talking to him the other day, like it's like he happily doesn't realise the enormity of it. He's just like, whatever, I'll go and score 2 tries in Twickenham. But it's not by accident. Like those guys, and not just Joe bringing them through. Like Jacob Stockdale played 2 years under 20s with the Irish under 20s. So like he was identified early. Let's get him in there, get 2 years there, get him ready. Same with James Ryan. As soon as he was in 4th year in school, it was pretty obvious that they were kind of going to bring him through the pipeline. Andrew Porter as well. He was at Loosehead as recently as the under 20s. for Irish rugby, it was good for him to switch over to tight head, and Leinster rugby were happy to do that. So I think it's also like a credit to the model they have here. English rugby doesn't have that. Everything's working together for the benefit of the national team, and those young guys coming through is absolutely a prime example of that.
Can I just say on that as well? I think Paul O'Connell was talking in the week or last week about how he's really trying to build that depth, and an example of that was when they won in South Africa the first test away from home for the first time. He could have stuck with the same team, but I think he made 5 changes for the second test. So just showing he was looking at the long-term picture rather than the short-term.
And even like last summer, the USA-Japan tour probably goes under the radar.
Yeah.
Joe Schmidt was harping on about how important this is, and you tend to go, whatever, Joe, the lines are on. But it really was. Like Dan Levy started testing that tour, and now he's like a really important player for Ireland. Jacob Stockdale and James Ryan made their debuts there. Ryan before he even played for Leinster. So there's always that long-term thinking, and I think that may be slightly missed with Joe when he's criticised. He's conservative here. Like Jordan Larmour being on the bench in this game is going to have a massive payoff when it comes to 2019 World Cup.
Well, I think that's the most important or most interesting aspect of the overall squad selection for this game is Larmour's position on the bench. Because if you go back to 2014 when we went to Twickenham and we went down 13-10, I think was the final score, the name on everybody's lips that day was Simon Zebo, because it was Dave Carney and Andrew Trimble on the wings. We couldn't really beat them on the outside, even though we came close a couple of times, and there wasn't that sort of penetration in the back three. And everyone was thinking, well, we have a guy left at home in Simon Zebo who could maybe change the game like that. And it was Fergus McFadden who came on for Trimble, and it was sort of a muchness, and we lost and we won the championship, but it could have been maybe a little bit better. But Larmour at this juncture in his career is less experienced than Zebo was at that point, and in a Grand Slam decider he's keeping a better version of Fergus McFadden than played in 2014 off the bench, and he's taking his place on the bench. Like, that's a massive vote of confidence in the guy.
Yeah, it is. Was he there would he have started coming through when you were in Leinster?
Jordan Larmour.
Jordan was.
Not to be honest, he wasn't. I didn't see too much of him, but he's. I think it's just his ability to, he's out and out raw pace, and the ability to step without slowing down, I think is his key strength. But he wasn't really that much involved in my last year at Leinster.
Yeah.
I don't remember him skinning me anyway. So
you didn't see him?
I'm sure I'd remember.
Yeah. Mike Ross told us a story about getting skinned by him.
That's right.
I skinned Rossi in joining. So
I think he also has that mindset. Like, he's 20, but by all accounts, he's already challenging senior players. Like, he's not going there just to make up the numbers. He's aggressive in training, and as well as that raw pace and skill, like his rounded game is really strong already. Even something small like hitting rucks. He came on for 6 minutes the other day. He only had to hit 3 rucks, but he did it really well, really effectively, and Joe Schmidt won't have missed that. Even in the Champions Cup, when he had to deal with Nemani Nadolo, he showed that he learned as well. He kind of gave him the outside shoulder rather than committing hard. So he's learning very fast, and I think he has that capacity to learn even faster. So I think, as well as looking forward, he is there on merit. He's shown that he's good enough, and it's really exciting for Irish rugby.
100%. It's one of those selections, though, that I wonder if it was 2 years ago, would we have seen him on the bench? You know what I mean? Like, I wonder, is it a sign? Firstly, well, it is obviously a vote of confidence in him, but is it a sign of where this team is going, where all of a sudden Schmidt is a little bit more confident in, I suppose, his overall squad? Like, and you're not looking for that sort of solid option off the bench. You're looking for the Mercurial actually does him an injustice, but like a phenomenal talent that maybe, like, we saw him get beaten by an Italian and it sort of cost a try. So he's not perfect, he's not the finished article, and yet Schmidt is willing to take a punt on him. Like, how much of that comes down to the fact that even though he's extremely highly regarded across Europe now as a proper danger man, be it for Leinster or Ireland, that you can't really predict what he's going to do because he hasn't been around for long enough for any defender to kind of decipher a pattern in his game, like in terms of which foot he might step off, what he might do.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of an element of risk. But having said that, like, Fergus McFadden also made a defensive error in that Welsh try where he kind of bit in a little bit early. So it's not like every player is faultless. Like, all these guys that make defensive mistakes, even the most experienced guys in the team. And yeah, he is more of an unknown entity for the English, but they'll have done their analysis. They know exactly what's coming. But it's going to be massively exciting when the game is there for the taking in the last 10 minutes, whatever. Him coming off the bench, a couple of tired forwards, and using that footwork. Really,
it's a calculated risk, and don't worry, Joe knows what he's doing. So
yeah.
Well, he's watching, so he'll be glad to hear that. I mean, in fairness, just to finish on the Ireland squad, the bench has actually made a massive impact, particularly I'd say across the last 2 games. But like Jack McGrath, Sean Cronin last week, Jordy Murphy carried very well when he came on. Obviously, it's the same guys again this week, but it seems as though would I be right in saying the bench is actually starting to make an even bigger impact than it has done in the last couple of years for Ireland, where they're properly... I think it was Eddie Jones who coined the term finishers as opposed to substitutes, but these guys are coming on and killing games.
Go for it.
So, yeah, I think the bench is a big weapon for Ireland. You saw against Scotland, the guys came on and made a huge difference. The first 30 minutes, Scotland were showing us what they're capable of, throwing the ball around, very dangerous. And another thing we're very good at is scoring at the right times. So against Wales, we scored just before half time and just after half time. Against Scotland, the same thing, just before half time. We're hugely efficient going into those kind of critical moments, critical times of the game. It's sorry, I've actually forgotten what was your question there.
Well, just a minute. Is it about
I do tend to waffle on every now and again. You're asking me about.
You're on the right track. In fairness, it was
the bench. Exactly.
Sorry, but we
too many
know
bangs to the head. Sorry. Yeah.
It's no laugh.
The bench it's a huge weapon, and for me, Jordy Murphy as well. He starred in that game against the All Blacks in Chicago, and he was fantastic. And he had the knee injury. He was out for kind of 9-10 months, and it's amazing that with the amount of talent and strength and depth. He found himself falling back down the pecking order. He comes back and he's 4th, 5th choice. He's moving to Ulster to get game time. And for me, to see him come on, and he was fantastic. The amount of times he got involved, his carries, and it's great to see Geordie back to full fitness. But yeah, the bench are making a huge impact, and that is a big thing from Joe. The guys coming on and really adding something. They'd have, which something I haven't done before with other coaches, but Joe would sit down and have. On a it might be a Thursday, might be a Tuesday. You'd have in the schedule a meeting for the bench, and you talk about how important your role is. You're going to be coming on in a crucial part of the game, like a massive, last 20 minutes. The game's going to be in the balance. You're going to be finishing the game, and how important your discipline is. How important is you haven't got the reps in training. You haven't got as much time doing the plays as the other lads. So being up to speed and making sure you know exactly where you're meant to be, what you're meant to be doing. Your discipline's good. Your physicality's good, and I think that's just a great way of. He's kind of telling the lads how important you are. Yeah, you're on the bench, you're disappointed, but you're there to add a huge amount of impact, and you're going to be the winning. It's that important. You're probably going to be the winning or losing of the game. And you see the guys coming on: Sean Cronin, Jack McGrath, Hendy last week, Jordy Murphy, Kieran Marmion. They're all. It's just the guys coming through now. They're all extremely physical, hugely dynamic, and they really add impetus when they come on. The likes of myself and Rossi. We're dead and buried. There's no one like that coming off the bench now. But the guys.
That's a bit harsh.
Well, back in the day, I did my part. But
when you mentioned those meetings. Just for the bench, would you have, barring injury, of course, would you have an idea of roughly when you're coming on as an individual?
Not necessarily. Probably just from experience of previous games, you might get an idea of probably be coming on, and you wouldn't have a guarantee of when you'd be coming on, but you'd expect to get, I suppose, Sean Cronin probably knows he's going to get 15, 20, 25 minutes, and he prepares that way. But you see when Sean Cronin has come on at other games, he's what a phenomenal player Sean is. So I think maybe it plays because he's so dynamic. It's kind of can be a bit of a negative for Sean because he just adds so much wow factor when he comes on off the bench. You really want to utilise that and get the most out of him. So
yeah, well that kind of takes me on to the England team as well, and. Jesus, Jones has wielded the axe here. There's 7 changes to their side. You've got new halfbacks, although Owen Farrell is moving into 10. George Ford has gotten the chop. Danny Kerr is on the bench, and Richard Wigglesworth is 9 now, 34 years old. As you mentioned to me earlier, he performed very well when he last week, but perennially third choice, not even second choice scrum half, and yet here he is starting. We'll start with 9 if you don't mind, but is this a case of maybe you can hold your own with Wigglesworth in that position for an hour or so, and then you have the impact of Danny Kerr coming off the bench, whereas previously it would have been Ben Youngs and then you'd have the Danny Kerr impact, but with Youngs gone, it's just been Kerr starting and you haven't necessarily had that massive impact off the bench.
Yeah, I think it's England looking for a bit of control. They really have ripped it up, 7 changes. I think it sums up where they are. They're doubting themselves. They've changed everything. I think they're going to change tactically. I think they're going to be a lot more direct. Kyle Sinclair is a big, strong carrier. Farrell at 10 is more direct. He takes the ball to the line. Obviously Ben Teo at 12 will do the same. And Wigglesworth and Farrell playing together, the Saracens combination, two guys who have controlled games together before, that's massive for England because they're low on confidence now. And we've seen George Ford just go completely into his shell. He's shirking his defensive duties, not making those tackles, not taking the ball to the line. And even when you're under pressure, your halfbacks have to be the ones who really feel they can turn the game. Like, you know, Owen Farrell's a big character. Though his confidence may be short now after 2 defeats, he'll still put himself in those positions to make big decisions. That really wasn't happening. I think Wigglesworth will do the same. He has a really good box kick, so they'll compete early against Ireland. And even one win in that area early on in the game can really twist the momentum and give it back to England after those 2 losses. So, yeah, they're changing a lot here, but I think it'll be more simple game plan, more direct. I think tactically they've been kind of muddy in their thinking, going out the back door a couple of times when really they should just be carrying. I think we'll see a lot more of that. So for me, it's definitely a better England selection, and also a pretty experienced bench to come on. Obviously someone new in Don Armand as well, who's been really good for Exeter Chiefs. So I'm pretty impressed with his team selection. I think they'll put up a lot better showing than the last couple of weeks.
What do you make of it, Mike?
Yeah, it's I saw that team says to me they're coming to be hugely physical, hugely confrontational. Seeing, you know, from a forwards perspective, seeing Haskell back in there, Cruz back in there, you know, big, physical, strong guys. Maybe if from a, you know, the thing with Haskell is maybe you'd worry from an English perspective you start giving a load of penalties away, because he can tend to do that. But look, the lads, I was up at Carton House today, the lads are under no illusion how big a test it's going to be. You know, they haven't lost there under Eddie Jones, they haven't lost 3 in a row since 2006, I think it is. So whenever you play England at Twickenham, it's hugely physical, and the amount of changes they've made, though, you wonder, like, yes, they're good changes and there's good guys coming in, but you see how settled that Irish team is, playing together week in, week out, and, you know, they get kind of thrown in together. How many changes is it? 6 or 7? Did you say? 7 changes.
7 in personnel.
They kind of, you know, yeah, they might be looking good in training, but you get thrown together, and, you know, how are the systems? How, you know, it takes time to, you know, you get better with time each game, and, you know, they've got one game to kind of gel and get the best out of each other. So we'll see. But, you know, England are wounded, and that's the danger. They're wounded. They've lost 2 games, and you know, they really are hurting. They want to finish the campaign on a high, and that's what makes it really exciting. There's the carrot there for Ireland of winning the Grand Slam, and it's teed up to be you know, a great weekend.
100%, and great to see our mate Dylan Hartley back as well. I couldn't have.
Oh yeah,
looking forward to his return. But in all seriousness, when you see like, you look at the midfield where Ben Teo has moved to 12, Farrell's gone to 10, Jonathan Joseph at 13. We do know what we're getting here. Like, from the Irish players' perspective, is it incredibly difficult game to prepare for, given there's a Grand Slam on the line? Like, psychologically, it's difficult to prepare for, but like, knowing, you really do know what England are going to bring to the table here. It is just going to be manic physicality for 80 minutes. Does that make it easier as an Ireland player, just knowing exactly what you're going to get on the day?
Yeah, they know what's coming up front, and physicality-wise, I think we can really get on top of the scrum. I mean, just our front row and the depth in the front row. We got, you know, Jack McGrath coming off, Tyke Furlong back fit, Bestie, unbelievable scrummager. You know, I think that's a real edge we can get in the game up front, and that's, you know, being on top in the scrum, being on top in the maul, the line-out maul, the line-out defence of the maul is huge foundations in winning the game. And maybe when you look at the back line of England, it's laced with huge amounts of pace. So I think maybe one of the key learnings for the Ireland team going into this game is just, you know, from past lessons of maybe the first game against Scotland last year, is just making sure they don't get caught out the blocks. So they come out, start well, because we saw, you know, when you start slowly, you don't get out the blocks away from home, the game can get away from you. And then the other thing is getting too narrow in defence, you know, slowing the ball down. We've got Levy there who's really good at slowing the ball down, so hopefully they won't be playing off too quick a ball. But when they are playing off quick ball, you know, just getting set, getting good spacings between your defenders. We saw in that Scotland game, first game last year, one pass from 9 to 10 was taken out 4 or even 5 defenders. So having good spacings, and then that allows you to get your line speed to go forward and meet them rather than accepting the tackle. When you're narrow and they get the space on the outside, you're going soft and you're accepting the tackle. So I suppose spacing in defence and not letting them play with quick ball would be the key learnings.
Yeah, I think we're just going to look at that midfield briefly before we move on. I think this combination looked really good in the last 10 minutes against the French, and that's why Eddie Jones has gone for the selection. We talk about George Ford just coming back away from the gain line, very lateral, so they weren't challenging defenders, taking the ball to the line before the pass. So we're going to pick out here, this is off a line out. There's Jonathan Joseph, there's Owen Farrell, and there's Ben Teo. The three guys set up to kind of create the line break. It's interesting to see that Joseph is the one at first receiver. You imagine him out in the 13 channel creating, but I think we'll see this a lot. And the key what he does here is he actually takes a couple of steps forward to the gain line. You know, he doesn't actually draw the defender right in, but he's challenging the defence. He's not turned straight away, so that he just sits down those guys inside briefly there. They're attracted to him before the pass goes out the back door to Owen Farrell. And then the next wave of attack, you're going to see Ben Teo running this really direct line. Like, we recognise that from Leinster. That's his absolute specialty. And the guy he's looking to take out of the game there is opposite number, Matthew Bastro. He's just going to get a little nudge on him there, probably illegal, but done subtly enough. And he's a real live option there before Owen Farrell goes out the back door. And you see there, he's just got the nudge on Bastro, and that's going to open up the space for Anthony Daly, or Elliot Daly rather, to go through that hole, and an easy line break just based on two guys taking the ball to the line in Joseph and Farrell, being direct, being square, and then that really direct line from Ben Teo. They throw an offload here, and the French knock it into touch. Directly from that line out, we see something very similar. There's Jonathan Joseph, he's the receiver in the line out, so he's moved slightly in, and you're going to have the scrum half Wigglesworth coming from the front of the line out there to accept the ball off the top, as you see now, and Joseph has moved out beyond the 15, so he's going to be first receiver again. Farrell's here, and you've got Ben Teo here. He's going to run that direct line again. Initially you get that little shape off Joseph, but he's taken that ball to the line again. He's accelerated on his first few steps, just interested defender, whereas George Ford was just shipping that ball on. And him taking the ball to the line with Simmons running that line just outside him, that attracts Bucksees in. You see he's bitten in there because there's such a threat with their acceleration towards the line. Go out the back door to Owen Farrell again. And now we roll to here, there's Ben Teo coming on that very direct line again. But Bastro again is asked a really difficult question. He's now exposed there. Do I bite in on Farrell, who's coming at me, or do I step out and take Ben Teo? He decides to bite in. You see him there, he's just bitten in on Farrell, and away goes Ben Teo through the line. He chose this big long pass, and it doesn't go to hand to Daly this time. Possible try if it does. But again, just highlights that threat. You get a nice little offload from Daly there to Simmons, and they do make ground out of it. But that kind of triple threat, Joseph is kind of seen as that creative element a little bit wider out, but he also challenges the line. Teo does the same, Farrell does the same. So it's directness with a bit of subtlety as well. And here we see Farrell. We're talking about George Ford going to a shell. Here's Farrell just bossing it, getting on the ball when they're down, and it's a tight French defence. Some good direct ball carrying from the forwards has created opportunity. And he doesn't take the easy option. He goes all the way to the width there to Daly, and some lovely skills just back inside to Johnny May. A class try. But that's an example of Farrell's, I think, his personality as well as his skill level. Stepping up, leading the team. There was another example where they created a massive overlap and he was screaming for the ball. Unfortunately for them, it was ignored. But for me, that trio in midfield really strengthens them. A lot more direct. I think it's going to be more difficult for guys like Ringrose and Aki, and that combination between the two of them and Johnny Sexton. So for me, it's a big plus for the English.
100%. Well, we'll look at one of the men tasked with combating that after the break, and a reminder to you guys as well that we are giving away an Ireland jersey. So if you have got any questions, or if you want to take 15 minutes to think of a question, please do. But we'll call that half time. So anybody who wants to go get a drink and whatever, work away, and we'll chat to you in about 10 or 15 minutes. Cheers.
8, 7.
Welcome back. Are you all sorted? Yeah, I think we are. Before we left, you were talking about England's midfield and their strength going into this one. You were impressed also by Gary Ringrose, particularly on the defensive side of things against Scotland. Very mature, obviously, whether he's on the back foot or not. You're going to take a look at some of his defensive prowess?
We're just going to look at one little clip here that kind of highlights how intelligent a defender he is. The 15-metre channel was a big issue in the previous games. It was talked about a lot before this Scotland game, and they did get cut out there once for that chance that Peter Horn kind of butchered. But generally speaking, channel, Gary Ringrose was exceptional in my eyes. He made 12 tackles, but a lot of his kind of coverage play as well was really impressive. We're going to see here as Scotland go to the width on the off a line out kind of strike, and Nick Grigg, the first centre, gets on the ball. They're going to get a kind of decoy line just outside him, and the kind of issue for Ireland is that Bundy Aki just inside Ringrose here. There's Ringrose. They obviously want to stay connected in defence, but Aki rather is going to have to pick up this second decoy line when Scotland use their second screenplay. You see here now that Aki has to focus here, and Ringrose actually will roll it back a little bit. Actually, he actually kind of backs away. So instead of kind of shooting up with that line speed, Ringrose actually slightly backs off, and he's just going to buy time for Aki to slide past that second screenplay. You see there. So Ringrose has gone all the way back there, but now Aki can get on beyond that screenplay out the back door, and now Ringrose can shift. So he's actually gone slightly backwards just to stay connected, because he knows he needs to have that inside defender at all times. Like, it's so easy for him to have, if we roll back again, it's so easy for him at this point to go, hang on, I can see that play out the back door, I'm going to rush up here. And then if there's good handling from Scotland, they're in behind, they potentially score a try. Instead, he just eases off, allows him to stay connected to Aki, and now when they get to the outside edge, you can see that they're going to have a 3-on-3. Now Stockdale does miss the tackle, just slips off it here, but there's Ringrose coming in and getting a high tackle on Stuart Hogg, and there's Aki as well. Now he's across the pitch. They stayed connected, the two centres, and when that offload goes, it's Aki who makes the interception, and it's a turnover for Ireland off a first phase attack. So just a little example highlighting Gary Ringrose's intelligence for me as a defender. You know, you can't always bring that line speed, even if that is your defensive system. Sometimes you have to stay a little bit softer, a little bit more passive even, just to stay connected on your inside edge. And I suppose you could probably tell us, like, that's a huge thing for a Joe Schmidt defense.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there, but Gary's he's very, very clever at, you know, kind of reading the defensive situation. And, you know, if Gary goes hard, he normally makes the tackle, and you have to make the tackle. If you go out the line, you know, in the video session, if you don't make the tackle, if you decide to go out the line, you have to make the tackle and finish the tackle off. Otherwise, if you miss the tackle, it'll be shown up in the video session. But he's just very clever, and, you know, it's all about connecting, keeping a chain, keeping the defenders together, and he just buys time for Bundy there, so he can, you know, he's realised their down numbers in defence. The attack have got the advantage of an extra few players, so they normally have 3 calls. This is an island now, but there's normally 3 calls. Most teams would have like a call to go hard. When you've got numbers, you've got more defenders and attackers, and it means you can get good line speed. You've got good spacings. You can get up and get hard in the attacker's face. And then you've got, you know, a soft call when you're in trouble. You're down numbers in defence, and it's all about sticking to the system, not panicking, not trying to solve things on your own. Just everyone working together. That small talk, small communication, and you know, building that chain, connecting together. And that's exactly what Robbie's done there. He's created time for Bundy to connect with him. So
yeah, I think that decision making is key. Like, just reading the situation. In other matches, maybe they come with the line speed. Even when they were numbers down and they paid the price on the outside edge. So for me, it looks like they're getting a bit more intelligent, and even Stockdale sat off a couple of times rather than herring away, and then when he got his chance in the first half, he took that instep pass.
How much of that is, I suppose, like, skills that he's accrued over the years, and how much of it is almost instinctive or just good rugby IQ? Because very often with players in their early 20s, these are facets of the game that we would expect them to have to develop as they go, and yet Ringrose seems to have this innate ability to figure out where he should be. Even that example you showed there where he drops back, like, it seems like extremely, again, I suppose, mature, a mature approach to defence.
Yeah, he's an extremely intelligent guy. Like, did really well in his studies as well, and he's in college. But he's an extremely intelligent defender in terms of how he works off others. And he's worked with Brian O'Driscoll. Don't forget that. Like, when he first came into camp, they were doing one-on-ones. He's picking up that experience as well. And yeah, he's just improved, and it's easy to forget. Like, I think we all did forget when he came back in just how good he was before that injury. He was very close to making the Lions tour. Andy Farrell was pushing to have him in there, and Gatland, I think, would probably recognise that he probably should have gone with him over Jonathan Joseph in the end. So really exceptional player, and it's exciting for Irish rugby again that he's going to be there for however many years to come.
I think it's just an example of everyone working off the same page. I mean, you saw with Robbie and Bundy working together. They've played together before at Connacht. They know each other inside out. For Gary to come in out the cold, hasn't really played much rugby, And, to be able to be exactly on the same page as Bundy with limited time training together, that's just, it's great to see that how they're working together. And, that's the thing with this Irish team is everyone knows exactly what they're doing, what their role is, what their job is. And a big thing with Joe is when you're going into a game, a test match, whatever, is your detail, you know what you're meant to do, you know what you're meant to do. Like, you could technically play the game on the Tuesday or the Wednesday because everyone knows the game plan, everyone knows exactly what the strategy, what the tactics are, everyone knows it. So by the time you come to the game at the weekend, all you need to bring is the discipline and the physicality. And for me, having worked with I've played for a good few teams, and I've worked with other coaches, and you'll be going into a Thursday team run, and you're still not 100% sure, what exactly we're meant to be doing here. What's my role here? So with Joe, you have that actual 100%. It gives guys confidence. They're going into the game. They're knowing if I know exactly where I should be, what I'm meant to do, what lines I'm meant to be running. And you generally go into the games with confidence because like I said, the two things you need to bring then is the discipline, not give stupid penalties away, and just bring controlled physicality. And you're very confident you'll be in a good place and to win the game.
They're definitely well oiled at the moment, Ireland. Have we seen the best of them, do you think, Mike, or is there more to come? I suppose if you look at this tournament, we've scored 17 tries compared to when we won a Grand Slam in 2009. It was, I think, 11 or 12. Now, the game has changed, admittedly, since then. But still, when you look at the Scotland game, particularly the first half, there were opportunities that Scotland threw away. It might have been a different game had they maybe a couple of those long passes gone to hand. Wales was nip and tuck until the very end. Obviously, France was a last-second drop goal, and yet here we are chasing a Grand Slam. Do you feel as though, even within this tournament, more so than looking ahead, that they have this sort of almost season-defining performance in them?
Yeah, I think they just ground teams down and frustrate teams, and they're just like, if they win the Grand Slam, I was reading that they're going to be probably the best Irish team there's ever been. I mean, Test match rugby is all about a very small margin. 1%ers, make a big difference. You could give a penalty away, it could cost you the game. One missed tackle could cost you the game, which in a Pro 14 or a Champions Cup game that may not be the case. But as I said before, what they've achieved and beating South Africa for the first time away from home, beating the All Blacks, winning the Championship 2014, 15, 18, and now hopefully the Grand Slam. I mean, when you look at what has been achieved, it's pretty phenomenal. So yeah, I think it's and leading into the next World Cup, it's all looking very, very encouraging at the moment.
Yeah, and for all our progress, Murray, I suppose there have been a couple of examples, I think, that you're going to look at in a second, where things might have been a little bit more comfortable for us. Again, we mentioned Scotland's execution maybe going awry a little bit, but chances where we spurned the opportunity to make a game or to put a game to bed.
Yeah, well, I think this is the strength of Joe Schmidt. No matter how impressive the performance is, there's always something that he focuses on in a negative light. When they lose, then he'll point out the positives. He's really good at managing that aspect of it. And after this match, himself and Richie Murphy have both kind of referenced a couple of passes that they didn't give on the outside edge a couple of times. Let's have a look at them. They scored 4 tries, but in Joe Schmidt's mind, they could have had 7. They could have had 6 or 7, So we're going to have a look at example here. Tyke Furlong's going to get on the ball here. They're attacking they're in possession in their own half, and generally this would build towards a kick, but what Tyke Furlong gives them is a massive kind of gain line advantage. He's going to carry in here, he's going to use his power and kind of pirouette out of the tackle. Really impressive carry, just exceptional strength and aggression. Gets him right over the gain line, dragging in all those Scottish defenders, and now they're really tight to the ruck, so opportunity beckons out wide. You're going to get Ringrose running that unders line and Bundy Aki out the back door. And Ringrose's line does just enough to hold Peter Horne in there briefly, and that's going to allow Bundy Aki to just get outside him and draw in that second last defender, something he maybe didn't do at the very start of the championship. Now he's doing it really well. I think he's grown into this championship really impressively, and you can see here he gets to the outside edge, gives that pass to Rob Kearney, and now it's a clear 2-on-1. You can see Earls there indicating already he sees the opportunity, but unfortunately the pass just doesn't go. If that pass goes there from Kearney, when we run it on, you can see the opportunity. Not only Earls going here, but all these guys working hard on the inside. You got Ringrose, Murray, and Johnny Sexton there. That's a potential try in Joe Schmidt's unbelievably demanding eyes, and it's one they'll think they missed. And there's a similar example here. They're in the 22 attacking. They've bounced back against the grain really well in this championship. Conor Murray sees the opportunity here. There's just disconnect in that Scottish defence, and Grant Gilchrist there is exposed. Dan Levy's also seen the opportunity. He's going to accelerate into that hole. And again, he's going to put them onto the gain line where they have been kind of battering through the phases. Sexton's looking for a hard line here, and again, possibly that out the back door pass. Instead, he decides to carry, but still on the next phase, we're going to see the opportunity for Ireland. Murray plays it again. He skips that ball past those two ball carrying forwards there. They've done that really well. To the kind of centre out there, and you see what it does. Horn is the guy again. He commits into those two ball carriers, and now you've got a 3-on-2. And like, we are being hypercritical here. It's unbelievably hard on that handling in such a narrow space. But Joe Schmidt will say that that's a 3-on-2. And Carney just tucks it. He backs himself to get over the line when Earls is in clear space. And this is one of the set piece plays. We'll come back to this actual set piece play in a while, but Gary Ringrose, lovely footwork. He's isolated Peter Horn there, and you see that sharp step in off his right foot, that lovely footwork and darting pace. But when he gets through the line, you can see here now, Earls has worked hard. Sexton and Conor Murray, they've been ahead of the ball from the other side of the ruck. And Schmidt will ask Gary Ringrose why he has that ball tucked in one hand now, coming towards the final defender. If you can get that back in two, allows him possibly to dummy or also to hit one of those guys. And you know, you can see Johnny Sexton here. He's the king of throwing out his arms in exasperation. He does it all the time. But he's right. He throws his arms out. He was like, why don't you give me that pass? I'm under the post for a try. So I think Ireland will pick out those little examples because Joe Schmidt is a perfectionist. I think it's a positive thing that he's going to drive with his players. Look, we haven't performed as well as we can. There's still more left in us. We've left tries out there in every game. Our defence hasn't been good enough in every game. So I think we'll see a peak performance from them in this game.
Mike, I don't mind saying that I'm a huge fan of Rob Kearney, like a man who gets an awful lot of criticism, but what I love about him is that he seems to have to run with more fervour than the average human being purely to reach parity with any other. He's like a throwback in a way, and I think he's like, I thought he deserved man of the match. You know, those examples aside, I thought he deserved man of the match last weekend. I can't help but feel though that looking ahead to a World Cup, when you've got a guy like Jordan Larmour, given how prevalent the fullback can be for Ireland in sort of broken play, and we've seen examples of it with Kearney there, are we missing that tiny little bit of dynamism from 15 that maybe someone like Larmour can give you, where Kearney, as great as he is, doesn't quite have the pace. He was never hugely reliant on pace, but probably isn't quite as fast as he was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it's getting that blend of experience and young guys coming through with that dynamism, as you say. But you know, hopefully Bestie and Rob do make the next World Cup, because you certainly need their experience. I think with Rob, he's a lot of the time he's been kind of written off. I remember. Before that All Blacks game in Chicago, everyone was saying, I can't. I think Rob was out with a hamstring injury, came back, had played maybe one game or not even any games, and everyone was saying, how is Rob starting? There's guys who are playing really well for their provinces, but Rob came back in, Joe backed him, and he's a big game player. He came back in and was probably one of the best players in that win in Chicago. So I'm looking at those couple of examples. They're clear-cut opportunities, and they're definitely things that will come up in the review. And the exciting thing is that we're scoring 4 tries, but we've left probably 2 or 3 or 4 out there. After the game, Gregor Townsend was saying, we bombed 2 chances. Well, seeing that, we bombed 3 chances. So, we're better than you, Scotland. Yeah, exactly. That's it. So, I think you're always looking for that perfect performance, and we can see there that to get that perfect performance, there's 2 or 3 opportunities we could have taken, and the score could have been a bigger score.
Funnily enough, I think we all probably live in Joe Schmidt's world now. Like, every supporter, every pundit, analyst, after every game, they'll be picking out the flaws more so, I feel, than they would have with previous Irish teams, because he sets that agenda. Really comes into the press conference and says the defence wasn't good enough, and everyone focuses on the defence for the week, whereas they've just won a championship, and even us, we're still talking about what could have been better. I think that's symptomatic of how Joe Schmidt is as a coach.
It's like that first game in France. There was a lot of criticism about the attack, but you look at the weather conditions, how the breakdown was reffed. France defended unbelievably well. I think they made 253 tackles. Guirado, the hooker, equalled the record of number of tackles in Six Nations, but they defended really well. So it's very hard to play, and they were creating opportunities the first half an hour. But we keep saying that such small margins of Six Nations, and to go out and win a Grand Slam, it will be a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah, well, you mentioned small margins, and going back to 2013, in the 5 competitive games Ireland and England have played, I think it's England lead on aggregate by 6 points. That's how close we're talking over 5 years. Ireland have scored 1 try in each of their last 3 visits to Twickenham. you would expect they're probably going to need more than that this weekend, or at least they're going to need to build on one try if they score it. Like, I suppose as an overall package, how different is this Ireland team now as a prospect for England than the last 2 or 3 teams that would have visited London?
I think it's a much better attacking team. Like, you mentioned the France game there, and you mentioned Matt Williams earlier on, and maybe some of the criticisms.
Well, he said we're bored. I think he was entitled to say it. It was just like we'd literally just won the championship, and he's like, I mean, what? We're no longer the underdogs. We're boring, but we're no longer the underdogs. It's like, Jesus, calm down, man. Like, enjoy it for 5 minutes at least.
In fairness, he's entitled to his opinion, and I guess the style of rugby doesn't marry up to what his ideal is. But I think it's unfair on the evidence. If you look through those games, I think we have some of the stats on the try scoring and where Ireland's tries come from. If only can get that up for us. And like a lot of the tries, 17 in this championship, you got 6 from lineouts in opposition 22. A lot of line-out scrum platforms in the opposition 22, a couple of interceptions and a couple of turnovers. But even if you look at what leads up to the 5 metre chances, like take that power play try that ended with Jacob Stockdale's second try against the Scots. The build up to that was a turnover. James Ryan offloads. They go to width, lovely little tip-on pass from Gary Ringrose, and Rob Kearney makes a big line break. Or you think about Wales, Dan Levy's try where they batter and batter and batter, and eventually he goes over with a bit of help from Rory Best. The build-up play to that was Sexton putting Kearney into a hole, offload. Earls destroys Halfpenny with his footwork, offloads inside to Murray, and he juggles it. Then they go into their kind of more direct play in the 22, which every team does. So I think even just focusing on those stats, it looks like everything is so reliant on the set piece platform, and to a certain extent it is, and England will see that as a weakness and try and target the set piece. But also the build-up play for me has had a lot more variety. Think of Johnny Sexton playmaking against Wales, little inside passes, a lot of line breaks. Earls has had a few line breaks, and I think that aspect of their game has developed a lot. We probably haven't seen as much of the forward linking passes as we thought based on November, but still a lot of guys are handling the ball regularly. CJ Sander now has an option to pass every time instead of just carrying all the time, and for me they have definitely progressed as an attacking force. I certainly find them exciting to watch, and I think on top of that then the set piece stuff that they come up with, like that power play, 3 phases, Gary Ringrose coming on the loop around Bundyaki, like for me that was exciting rugby, even if it was very patterned. So yeah, like in my opinion they're enjoyable to watch, but I can see why Matt would maybe say that.
What do you make of that? Well, as Matt pointed out, in fairness, it wasn't necessarily a criticism, it was more an observation, and he was talking about how well oiled they are, they're machine-like in their approach, and that he didn't find it particularly exciting, and yet he was enthused by their success. I'm interested to know, given you play for Leinster, and there would have been some amazing rugby played, and obviously in games for Ireland there would have been games where you not even come out of your shell, but I'm sure there would have been days where you trot off thinking we scored some really nice tries there. When you're watching this Ireland team, are you entertained? Does it even matter? Like, they're champions of Europe.
Well, I find them pretty exciting to watch, to be honest. So I'm not results speak for themselves. I mean, if they win the Grand Slam, Joe spoke about winning 3-0. I mean, I think we'll all be pretty excited if we win the Grand Slam. I think we maybe get a little bit greedy. The guys, they're doing phenomenally well, aren't they? I mean, we're talking about the best Irish side in history, possibly. I certainly don't find them boring to watch. I really enjoyed the game. I was there last week, and I really enjoyed it. So. It's entertaining. Like
there's like you mentioned, Larmour possibly coming in at 15. There's always scope for more creativity. If you get Joey Carberry into the team at some stage, a second playmaker. Like, I thought that was encouraging to see Ringrose, even though it was in a very patterned power play kind of set piece, getting on the ball twice in the one passage. That's encouraging to see, because there is a lot of responsibility on Johnny Sexton to be the creator, especially in phase play. And he does that brilliantly. But Ringrose there in the team, as well as his possible passing ability that's going to develop, he has that footwork as well. Even before the 4th try that Sean Cronin scored, it comes from a 5 metre maul, and you can go, Ireland are so reliant on that. But the passage that led up to that penalty to kick into the corner was Ringrose absolutely ruining Hugh Jones with a little step, a lovely fend, all the way up to the 22. Suddenly Scotland are under massive pressure and they concede a penalty. So that, for me, was creative, exciting attacking play from a guy Ringrose, who is hopefully going to grow into that second playmaker, both with his footwork and his handling ability.
I suppose if this is the big debate, really, we're not doing too badly. We've won the Six Nations, we're in a Grand Slam showdown at Twickenham, and we're arguing as to whether it's boring or not. It's been pretty fun so far, I think. I'm interested, Mike, in, I suppose, from the perspective of a team that has seen their championship defence, or just their title tilt end prematurely in England's case. We'll hear, obviously, and we have heard that, you know, once you put on your national team's jersey, it is a bit representing the country and the pride and whatever, and the motivation will look after itself, particularly with Ireland coming to town. But how debilitated do you think they will have been by those last 2 defeats? Like, it's 8 years since they lost 2 games in the Six Nations. They seem to be the team that were gunning, like, probably I wouldn't say necessarily ahead of Ireland in terms of their progress, but they were certainly more widely tipped to do something in 2019 than Ireland were. And all of a sudden, it's almost like they're back at base camp, and it hasn't quite worked out for them. Now, I'm not by no means saying they're finished, and I'm sure they'll come again. But going into this game, having lost 2, what's that mindset going to be like?
I suppose the worry for Ireland going to Twickenham is we know it's going to be hard, but on the back of them losing 2 games, you know, their backs are to the wall. They're kind of like you know, I'd liken it to being like a caged dog that hasn't been fed for a while, being prodded with a stick. They're going to be hurting. They're going to come firing out the blocks, and you know, the worry is that, you know, sometimes that can really galvanise a team when noise from the outside coming in, that, you know, you're playing poorly, individuals are playing poorly, and, you know, it can actually, that gets to a point where it starts to, you know, it actually galvanises the team, brings real unity, and a really big performance comes out. That's what my worry was when we went to France for the first game. France have been doing very poorly, poor results. You know, coach had gone, new coach came in, and, you know, that I was concerned that there was going to be a big performance from France, and they did play very well. But yeah, that's would be my only concern for the guys. I'm very confident of them going to Twickenham, and you know, they're in great shape. They've been playing really well. But just, you know, mentally, just as long as we're where we have been for all the other games, and, you know, in the past, I think Irish teams have been maybe better when they're the underdogs, but I don't think that's a concern with Joe. I know Joe will have them mentally and physically, you know, as at the best point they could possibly be at. But yeah, there's no doubt England are going to be hurting. They want to finish the campaign on a high, and Ireland want to win the Grand Slam. So it's all teed up for a great weekend.
Just on the England thing, like, a guy who probably was entitled to have a little wry smile this week, and probably didn't because he's such a nice guy, is Stuart Lancaster, because he probably looks at England now and sees it as a very similar position to the 2015 World Cup. Like, the same questions are there. Who's your 12? Who's your 10? Who's your 7? Is your captain really a good choice? You know, they haven't really resolved those issues beyond doubt. You know, Farrell goes into 10 now, Theo comes into 12. At 7, Haskell is, 33, is he 34 even possibly? Probably it would have been Underhill if he was fit for this, but Rob Shaw's been playing there after being criticised by Eddie Jones himself. So I think Lancaster will probably look at it and go, I wonder how much he's really done to push things on. And those questions are massive now for Eddie Jones. He has to solve them. And he does seem to have a bit of doubt about himself. You know, he's saying this week, maybe I should bring in an attack coach. I think he's going to change up the shape they use in attacking play. And he's asking all those questions about his selection. Whereas in Joe Schmidt, Ireland have a coach who exudes confidence in what he's doing. Like, you talk about how well prepared the players are, they can just focus on physicality. And, like, just as an example of that, we want to look at one of the little set piece plays, because this is where Joe Schmidt, one of his real strengths, he's so creative. And the fact that we mentioned that Stockdale try, I mentioned it again, the fact that worked gives just so much confidence to players. Like, Joe gave us this move, it worked perfectly, we scored a try off it. And even though this one doesn't result in a try, it just shows his little clever thinking. And we saw the move before, we saw Ringrose go through on the line break. If we go back to November against Argentina, we see exactly the same position on the pitch. Conor Murray's going to feed the ball there, and they're lined up in exactly the same way, almost exactly the same way. You know, midfield scrum here, you got Sexton and Aki and Stockdale down here, and Murray breaks off the side of the ruck, and you can see, after scrum rather, you can see these defenders all being attracted across here. Now the difference this time is Aki actually goes over Sexton, and Sexton comes underneath him there, and that just gives a little kind of early cue to the Argentinians to push back to that left hand side of their scrum. Also note Stockdale here, he's showing nothing. You know, his hands aren't up. Sexton, probably similarly enough, he's not really showing that much. He's not really a viable target. So the kind of body language is poor. Argentina can shift straight across. Aki throws that pass maybe a little bit early to Chris Farrell, and you can see here the Argentinian defenders are already closing up into that space. He sees nothing in front of him, has to Adam Byrne. He's got 2 defenders on him. It's a real mess of a kind of first phase attack, and he gets tackled just behind the gain line. The forwards have to get around the corner to get to that ruck. When we come to the Six Nations, Joe Schmidt hasn't used this play since. He's been storing it away, and he's made a slight little tweak. He's making sure that his players, the next time they execute it months later, are going to be ready. Even before the ball goes, you can see Stockdale here, hand up, I'm a target. Also, he's made a tweak in that Aki is going to come underneath Sexton, and Sexton's going to go in front of him here. So Sexton is more of an instant threat to the defensive line. And his kind of body language is really good as well. That animation that Joe Schmidt talks about, both those guys look like they could potentially get the ball. There's a lot more threat. And when they switch underneath, it's later. So now Aki, after all these guys have been really drawn across, the back row from the Scots has been drawn across onto that right-hand side. When he throws that pass out to Gary Ringrose, it is a one-on-one, and Peter Horne is straining to get across the pitch there. He could potentially go through the hands to those outside options, Earls and Carney, who are really on, but he backs his footwork with loads of space, and he beats his man, and away they go. And we know how that one ends, unfortunately. But for me, it's just an example of how ahead of the game Schmidt is with these little things. One little tweak, Aki gets underneath Sexton, ensuring his guys have that animation, I'm a viable target for the ball. And I think we've seen loads of examples of that across the tournament. Good animation, good discipline, all the little kind of pillars of the game, and now the confidence in their attack has increased on top of that. So for me, Schmidt is a massive factor in all this as well. He's the guy who's driven everything, and I think he's in a competitive advantage before Saturday.
And that's a small detail we talk about. I mean, in camp, even sometimes when the guys come back into camp on a Sunday night or a Monday, the guys would go to a sports hall and they'd walk through plays and moves that they want to use. And it's all about, running the exact lines as we talk about that animation. Even, guys working off the ball, that work off the ball creates space for players elsewhere. We saw that clip there, you said, where who was it on the wing was, the Stockdale, I think, didn't have his hands up the first one. The next one he did. So, just animation, getting your hands up, holding defenders and creating space for other players. And a lot of the time, Joe will pick players and, you watch it on the TV, you might think, oh, he had a pretty quiet game. And, to the viewer, he may have done, but it's the work they do off the ball, creating space and creating opportunities for other players that, Joe sees all of that kind of stuff, whether it's, a breakdown, clearing past the ball, clearing past the ball, taking a defender off his feet, making it more difficult for their defenders to get around the ruck because you've gone past the ball, you've taken a defender off his feet and made it difficult for that guy to get around. So it's all the very small detail that Joe will see, and that is reflected in his selections.
Your specialty, dark arts at the ruck.
Oh yeah, that's one of my strengths, wasn't it? Yeah, so yeah.
We should have got a few examples of that. That would have been good.
Next time, for the next Grand Slam. We'll take a couple of your questions in a minute if we could get people prepared there just to pass around the microphone and whatnot. I was interested, Mike, to ask you.
Ask me, come on.
We mentioned it. Well, we mentioned it there, like that. Murray, you mentioned it, that England now all of a sudden find themselves at a juncture where, a year and a bit out from a World Cup, they're not quite where they expected to be, and they're probably not quite where they thought they were. And whereas Ireland are and there's no need to get carried away with ourselves, we are guilty of that at times, but we're just mouldering along nicely, we'll say, for now, ahead of Japan. Mike, how have England wound up at this juncture? Like, where has it gone wrong for them, do you think?
That's a tough question. I'm not sure. They were going, they were going unbelievably well, and it was kind of a role reversal of the last Six Nations where England were coming to the Aviva. They'd won the championship and they were going for the Grand Slam. And I don't know. I'm not sure. They've had a lot of injuries. Let's be honest. They have had a lot of injuries, and I suppose Eddie Jones is saying, teams do go through these kind of rough patches, and they're going through a bit of a rough patch, and it's all about the learnings going towards the next World Cup, and it's a speed bump. They'll learn things, and for them, hopefully it'll make them better.
Hopefully it won't.
No, for them. That's why I said for them. Hopefully it'll make them better. But from their point of view, it's all about you learn from your mistakes, and from their end, if you go into a World Cup and you haven't lost a game, you're teed up for the wheels to fall off. So I suppose from their end, you'd rather it happen before the World Cup and be peaking at the right time.
100%. Like Mike mentioned it there, it is a role reversal, and if the 12 months have shown us anything, it's that teams can turn their fortunes on their head within 12 months. So I presume, Murray, as much as we might be basking a little bit in this at the moment, England are going to be thereabouts
Let's
next
not write
year,
them
aren't
off
they?
just yet. Like for this game, they could be thereabouts. I really think it's going to be unbelievably tight again. A couple of underperformances, like the breakdown, we probably haven't mentioned it enough just yet. That's been a huge issue. And when you fix that, also by fixing their gain line, like Sinclair, Teo, guys like that, getting over the gain line, that'll help fix the breakdown. They're going to put an extra body into the breakdown now. They're going to have a little bit more support around the ball carrier. Yes, that tightens them up in terms of their attack. But something as small as that can change the whole narrative. And next week you'll be talking about how good England are. They could have had a big win over Ireland. You know, it's small little details they'll be focusing on rather than having that big philosophical discussion.
I think Vunipola has been a huge loss for them at
Exactly,
8. I think there was a stat there that the amount of metres he carried the last Six Nations, he's carried more metres than the whole team put together in this Six Nations. So that just emphasises what a loss he is. I mean, he brings in 2, 3, even 4 defenders, and that's obviously going to create a lot of space elsewhere. So he has been a huge loss for them.
Yeah, they'll be thereabouts for the World Cup.
One of your areas of expertise, of course, would be the breakdown. And what have you made of them, particularly, I suppose, the last 2 games? Like, this would have been an issue, I think, for a long time, and yet it was only properly exploited in the last 2.
Yeah.
But were you surprised that in Paris they didn't really seem to adjust, given what had happened at the breakdown only 2 weeks prior?
Yeah, I suppose I thought it would be a wake-up call after that Scotland game where Barkley, Hamish Watson caused absolute carnage at on the floor. They really slowed the ball up, turned it over, I think 10 times. So I think Murray and myself were talking there before. They're playing this 2-2-2 system. And what you find is often, with Ireland, they like to have an effective carry, ideally get over the gain line. Then you have the 2 guys coming to clear past the ball, whereas England have been having a ball carrier and then just one guy clearing, and it gives a back row an opportunity to get in over the ball. So I think that will be something they'll try and adjust in having minimum two going to the breakdown rather than sending one to the breakdown, especially when you've got the likes of Dan Levy, CJ Stander over the ball, who are really good poachers. Yeah,
and Ireland's kind of competitiveness at the breakdown massively increased in the Scottish game. Early in the tournament, they were kind of standing off a little bit, being very selective. Noticeably, we saw a massive kind of competition, even from guys like Earls and Stockdale out in the wide channels going for that ball. So they've shown their ability there, and England will be massively aware of that.
Yeah, before we get a couple of questions from the audience, we will be shot if we don't ask Mike a lot about the line out. We got a couple of comments the last time for not bringing it up, God bless. I suppose, it's going to be a massive battle firstly, and it might swing the game one way or the other. It'll be Ian Henderson presumably calling the line-outs this weekend, which he's done in the past.
Yeah, he did against England last year, yeah.
How do you see that line-out battle going this weekend?
Yeah, well, Hendy's proved he can call the line-out. I mean, Hendy's got pretty much the complete game. He can play 6 at international level and play really well. He can play lock-ins. It's a very hard thing to be able to specialise in both. I think for Hendy, taking his game to the next level was, as you said, calling the line-outs, real test in that last game against England, and then he called them against Argentina in the autumn internationals, and he called them really well. So I think going into the next World Cup, Joe identified Paul O'Connell's retired, our line-out caller. Then Donica Ryan stepped out, went to Racing. He's a line-out caller. So who does that leave us with? Just Dev, really. So, Dev's done a great job calling the line-out, and he will do going forward. But, we need to have some backup of someone who's able to call the line-out. And, Hendy able to call the line-out is brilliant, and he's done a really good job of it. Dev will be working with him behind the scenes to help him out. He'll be learning from Dev in that aspect. But then you've got the security of Dev on the bench. If things aren't going great line-out wise, you can bring Dev on and really shore up the line-out attack. And as we mentioned, Dev in the line-out defence, it's gives nightmares to hookers thrown in. I mean, when you've got someone 6'11" going up, Dev's also very clever. He did a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of analysis, looking back at previous games, and they'll have an idea what kind of systems they use. So. It's we seem very well stocked in the second row, which was a huge concern once I retired, and Paul O'Connell retired. So yeah.
2 huge losses. We'll take a few questions from yourselves. We are giving away a jersey. It's behind me there. You know what it looks like, but So work away. Is there a microphone going around there?
Do you want me to hold it up?
Oh yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you very much.
Oh.
There you go. Do you see it? Lovely.
You have to pick the winner, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you're going to be picking the winner. So
how do I pick the winner?
Well, it's just
the
whichever
best
question you like.
Right, okay.
Yeah. If you like none of them, you can take the jersey.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Garrett, have a quick question. One observation I'd make is England should have also lost to Wales in Twickenham, bar a dodgy decision, so it's more than 2 matches. But out of both the squads, and I include the coaching staff, who would you replace in the Irish team with an English opposition number? That's my question. If you look one-on-one.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd actually probably Billy Vunipola if he was fit. I think for me, he's in the top 3 players in the world. I thought he was a massive loss for the Lions in the summer. I think he would have had a massive effect on that series. So a fit Billy Vunipola I would put in there, and also a fit Maro Itoje. He doesn't look as dynamic at the moment. It's probably something we haven't mentioned is the fact that the English players have looked a little bit lethargic in this championship. The Irish guys have been managed so well. I think there was a really good article in the Telegraph this week, a guy called Charlie Morgan, and he wrote about the player welfare management, the Kitman Labs. But he pointed out that Johnny Sexton has completed like 280 minutes, whereas for club and country, and Owen Farrell has done that 16 times this season. So it's an example of how the English guys have probably been flogged a little bit since the Lions tour. And I think Itoje is a guy who has shown clear signs of that. But when he's at his best, I think I'd probably have him in Ireland's second row as well. What about you, Mike? Who are you dropping?
Jeez. Yeah, I think you stole my one, Vunipola. Yeah, he's a serious ball carrier. It gets great momentum for teams. So
you can play too as well.
Yeah. So probably Vunipola. So yeah.
Would there be anyone in England's backline that you'd like to see that would make Ireland starting 15?
Yeah, Anthony Watson's a guy who I really rate. He also did well on the Lions tour, lightning quick, and he's moved into 15 now. We probably haven't seen the best of him there just yet, but he's also a guy you'd probably push in, and certainly English fans would tell you he's a lot better than Rob Kearney and our wingers, Ireland's wingers. So yeah, he's one possibly as well, but I think it's pretty even. And to be honest, when I look at those two 15s, I think in the key positions Ireland have the kind of stronger, more experienced options.
Fair enough. Good question. Anybody else?
You've got the jersey so far.
There's a gentleman here. Oh, lady, sorry.
Hi, so you mentioned earlier about Ireland's gameplay being described as boring. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but sometimes it can be viewed as one-dimensional or maybe quite predictable. Like, for example, Murray box kick out of a ruck, chase with Carney or Earl. So how can we ensure going into the World Cup in 2019 that we're not viewed as predictable, that we can take on the likes of the All Blacks, Argentina, considering the last time we did so well after Six Nations, we didn't do so well in the World Cup?
Good question.
Yeah, I think the reason we alluded to before is maybe one of the reasons that we lost that Argentina game was because of the personnel we lost. Six huge players. I mean, that, like as I said, that would affect the All Blacks. I don't think we'll change much the way we play going into the next World Cup. I'm sure teams. Every time we play a test match, before we play Wales, before we play Scotland, the coaches, the players talk about our kicking game, and they know what's coming. But it's effective and it works. So why change a winning formula? I mean, they'll keep tweaking and keep getting better, and those 1%ers, where we can get better here, and of course they'll add things, but it won't change too much. It's a system that works. It's embedded in the players. They know what they're doing. They know where they're meant to be, and they'll keep evolving, but they won't reinvent the wheel. That's for sure.
Yeah, I probably agree. I don't think we're going to see massive changes. Like Ireland's attacking play is quite patterned compared to other teams. Like they do tend to go higher into the phases off a set piece where everything's organised, everyone's in the position they need to be, and Joe Schmidt has a lot of control over that. So they certainly are different to other teams. Like the All Blacks, who are unbelievably skilled across the board, have very little structure. They have some basic structures of counter-attack, kick return, where people need to be in positions, but a lot of it is just individual decision making, because you have a loose head, a tight head, who can pass and handle, and you have a hooker who can beat anyone out in the wing. So that suits them more. Schmidt would see this as being more suited to the Irish players, and he'll always say, listen, these guys can make decisions for themselves. I think if you're going to try and be hypercritical, maybe they could get a second playmaker in there, a guy like Joey Carberry working with Sexton in that kind of dual playmaker kind of axis. But realistically, I don't think we're going to see that change.
I think another area that Ireland specialise in, which is a real point of difference for them, and it's from the start when Joe came in, it's what is a point of difference. You look at other teams. There's a lot of teams that are bigger than us. South Africa, France, England. A lot of teams bigger than us. But what can we do that's a point of difference that other teams haven't got? And that is the discipline. We give less penalties. We're so well drilled, and our discipline's really good. We give less penalties away than any other team in international rugby. And what happens is when you give penalties away in Test match rugby, it gives opposition easy access points to get into the game. And games are often won by 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. So that's a real point of difference for Ireland is their discipline and the number of penalties they give away.
He started to address the size thing as well, I think, as well. Joe Schmidt does go back to a lot of these smaller teams, but like Andrew Porter's a pretty big boy.
Yeah.
Jacob Stockdale's massive for a winger.
Yeah.
Bundy Aki's unbelievably physical. So and James Ryan, obviously, outstanding athlete. Like he's been aware of that and increasing that side of the game as well. I think he's picked out those guys for not only their skills, but also for their athletic ability.
So is it a case of going into a World Cup not necessarily with extra strings or a bow that other teams mightn't necessarily be able to detect in advance, but more so, this is what we have, we're one of the top 2 or 3 best teams in the world, it's up to you to beat us. I'm just ironing out the kinks of the game plan that we already have and evolving slightly, as Mike says.
They beat the All Blacks with a pretty similar game plan to what they're playing now, and they did take risks in that game. Even think of the last try, Robbie Henshaw scores off the scrum, but that comes from a nice wide play on a scrum and they kick deep. Like again, that's a pre-called kind of tactical play, but there is a risk involved there, and they went to that width and they got the reward. So I think they've shown that it can work, and I think Joe Schmidt, with all his best players fit, would back them to beat anyone in the world.
Cool. Anybody else there? A few more up here.
Hey, to touch on what you mentioned there about Porter and Ryan 2 years ago and Stockdale and Larmour last year, do you see anybody in the current crop of under-20s peeking into our World Cup squad or sometime next year?
I was talking to someone about this during the week. I'm not sure it's as outstanding a crop of players. There are definitely individuals there who are going to push into senior rugby, but in time for the World Cup, I don't know, it would be a massive ask. There's a couple of impressive guys like Angus Curtis at 12 has done really well, quite a powerful young man and supposedly very determined, so he'll push through. Jack O'Sullivan at number 8 has been absolutely outstanding, filling in for Caelan Doris, who was injured before the championship, and the 2 tight heads, Jack Ainger and Tom O'Toole, look really good as well. But for me, looking at the World Cup, I think it's probably a step too soon for them, but definitely a lot of individual talent there.
It's amazing how quickly guys can find themselves in the setup, though. I mean, I probably wouldn't have thought James Ryan or Porter or Stockdale would have been there. And like you look at Stockdale, 10 tries in 8 tests, it's phenomenal. So things can happen pretty quickly out the blue. So.
And even Schmidt always thinks that. Like Sam Arnold has been around the squad pretty much the whole championship. Obviously he's not under 20 anymore, but really exciting prospect. So that when hopefully they won't lose another outside centre, but if they do, then Sammy Arnold's been in there, he knows the plays, he knows everything, knows the system. The same happened with Gary Ringrose, so Schmidt will manage the ones who are talented enough and they'll push through.
We've got a couple more on this side as well.
10 more.
Oh.
I'm just wondering, do you guys think that this Irish team can control their emotions come the next World Cup better than any other Irish team? Especially when we beat France in the last World Cup and you have Madigan visibly upset or just overcome with emotion after we beat them, and then when we beat Australia in the previous World Cup before that, I think O'Gara got a bit upset in an interview afterwards. Do you think this team is at a different level and they've beaten the All Blacks and they've pretty much beaten everyone, that they can go on to not just go to a semi-final but go to a final and not let emotion kind of get the best of them?
I think with this Irish team, we've seen at this Six Nations, we're just finding how to win. I mean, we spoke about that game in France where, we could have easily have lost that game, but somehow, I'm not too sure how, it's kind of a bit of a miracle and phenomenal what they did, but they won the game. Against Wales, again, very, very close, could have gone either way, but we found a way to win. The first 30 minutes, I think we were under the pump from Wales, and then, as I said, we found a way to score just before half-time, just after half-time, crucial periods of the game. Against Scotland, you'd probably say we were lucky to, the first 30 minutes, Scotland were, probably on top. But, we found a way to score just before half-time, just after half-time. So I think we found a way to win. Those games against New Zealand, beating Australia, beating South Africa in one calendar year, that's going to give us, the squad, huge confidence. They know, they believe in the systems, they believe in what they're doing, and they have full confidence if they stick to the game plan, they'll win. So I think that's going to be a huge thing going towards the next World Cup.
So we're going to win the Grand Slam and the World Cup.
We're going to win. No, hold on. We're going to win the Grand Slam, and yes, we're going to win the World Cup. Yeah.
Has that maybe? It's probably wrong to describe it as a dependence on emotion, but has that almost been taken out of them a little bit in that they're not as reliant as getting like freakishly fired up on a sort of a one-off occasion, because they are now so confident in their ability and the game plan that they don't necessarily need to almost have an outer body experience to get over some of these top teams.
Yeah, I think the one with Mads and I think it's just the raw emotion. It's a pressurized environment. It's like my missus and my mum would do my head in. They think you just go around, chuck the ball around the pitch, and you're having a bit of crack. But it's everyone's it's my mum thinks you just throw the ball into the lineup. But anyway, it's hugely pressurized. It's sport at the highest level, such small margins to winning and losing a game, and I think like the build up, you feel the pressure, and guys deal with it in different ways, but just the raw emotion of you've put your body on the line for 80 minutes, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the preparation during the week, and sleepless nights, whatever it is, staying up late on the laptops, and it's just an absolute release of energy and satisfaction. There's no better feeling than knowing how hard you've worked, knowing you've emptied the tank on the pitch, and the final whistle goes, you've won a big game, and that feeling in the changing room after, for the first kind of couple of hours after, there's no better feeling.
Yeah, that's spot on. But I think what you do, there's a point in that, like, it seems like the consistency has massively increased under Joe Schmidt, like across all levels of Irish rugby. It seems like because of the stuff that you've mentioned, what he pushed you to focus on during the week, you're so concentrated on that and getting that performance aspect right, that the emotion then on match day kind of almost takes care of itself. Like, that's always obviously massive in any road match. The physical contact is incredible, and you're always going to need that element. I think Joe Schmidt is aware that maybe that's not his strength, and he recruited Andy Farrell for his defensive mind, as well as his ability to kind of motivate and speak and bring that kind of emotion, and he pushes his players to bring that. But I think the consistency is better now in this Irish squad, beyond just an emotive high. You can't go that high every week, because you're going to dip down the following week, and that example is probably really relevant. So for me, they're better in terms of consistency, and I don't think it's crazy to think that this is our best chance potentially of winning a World Cup in 2019.
Jesus, I thought we were joking about winning the World Cup.
Why not say it? They've got a great group of players. They've got young guys coming through. They've got experience in key positions. So if they avoid a similar horror of injuries, I think they'll be in good shape.
That sounds good. Anybody else? Another gentleman up the front here.
I was listening to something there recently, and it described Mike as the hard man of the Leinster camp for one stage. And then it went further on to talk about how if lads were not motivated, someone would start throwing digs. Would that still happen in the Irish camp these days, or did that die with the likes of Peter Classy?
Yeah.
Who have you punched?
No.
Hartley's throwing digs.
Yeah, no. It's like, obviously the game has cleaned up a lot, because it's on the screens, it's on the TVs. You can't get away with much now. You see everything, but like there'd definitely be scraps in training. I remember at Leinster my last year, I saw Tyke Furlong and Jack McGrath throwing digs at each other in I think it was a mauling or scrummaging session, and I was just thinking, geez, I'm definitely getting out of the game at the right time. I mean, there's two absolute huge, strong men, and they were like, it was ridiculous. But there is definitely, especially when you the disappointment of you're not picked in the starting team and you're on the bench. I don't know if you saw it, but actually, just something's coming to my mind. Did anyone see the clip of the Montpellier game the other day?
Yeah.
In the warm up, starting prop and his own player on the bench throwing digs at each other. It's it can be hard to take when you're used to starting, and then you get dropped, and you're doing live mauls or live scrummaging, and someone comes in and hits you late, or it's small little things can spark off a big kickoff in training, and you'd see a lot more scraps in training than you would in matches.
Have to ask, before somebody else asks and wins the jersey, who won, Jack McGrath or Tyke Furlong?
I'll be honest, and it was pretty even. It was pretty even. I think it got broken up, and two absolute beasts going at it. It was
majority decision draw.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I think if you're English, you got to be really excited about the lineup that they've picked. It's very aggressive, but from an Irish point of view, I see a lot of indisciplined players there naturally. And I suppose just to split the question two ways for Murray, there's a bit of a difference in how the referees in the domestic competitions for Ireland and England, how they're looking at the breakdown, and that's caused England some issues in this Six Nations. But you throw a Southern Hemisphere referee into the mix, so I just wonder how Murray thinks we're going to do or how England will do from a discipline standpoint. And then also for Mike, how does Joe actually instill that level of discipline in the players, whereas you're talking about really high pressure test environment, and yet you're keeping the penalty count in single digits, which is pretty incredible. So
yeah, like the first part, I think Angus Gardner will definitely suit the English more. I think they've really struggled to adapt to the referees. Like you saw in the French game, as I mentioned earlier on, like the players are adapting to the referees probably wanting a low penalty count. The French tacklers kept rolling into the first arriving player, and it wasn't picked up at all. England didn't do it themselves until later in the game. And you're right, the Premiership has been very different. The breakdown laws are certainly favouring the attacking team arriving just with one player over the ball. That's the new law, and you probably don't have to resource it as much. So now they've had to adapt again to different refereeing styles, and I think they've definitely struggled there. Interesting you mentioned about England's discipline. Like Kyle Sinclair is a guy who has a bit of a hot head, and Dylan Hartley's been mentioned already. I wonder, do players try and wind up those guys? Is that something you actually do out there? You say he's got a hot head?
Yeah, well, I think just like Ireland is so well disciplined, I think they'll just grind. Hopefully they'll just grind England down, and teams find it very frustrating playing against Ireland because they feel like they're putting everything into it, their heart and soul. They're being very physical, but then they're not winning on the scoreboard, and they can get frustrated. And like I said before, with like Haskell coming in, he's obviously a great player, hugely physical, but you can see that frustration coming into the game, and then some of those guys may be starting to give away penalties and get on the wrong side of the referee.
Yeah, how does Joe set that standard? Like, I mean, what does he?
Yeah, so on the discipline front, from day one since Joe came in, it's all about habit, and it's not just on the field; it's everything you do off the field. So there's a quote that everyone's pretty big on in camp. It's Aristotle: "You are what you repeatedly do." And so the discipline doesn't come from just out training on the pitch or during the games. It's like how you hold yourself, how you are around camp, how you are with the fans, how you behave yourself. There was a time when, like, one of the first weeks Joe was in there. I think so when you go into camp, you get your key card for Carlton House, and it's a little envelope. And there was an envelope found in the lift, so someone had taken their key card out and just maybe dropped their envelope, and that player got pulled up on that in the team meeting, and I don't think anyone's ever lost an envelope to their key card since. But it's creating habit, and not just on the pitch, but Joe will put you in testing positions on the pitch. He'll work you really hard, so you're very fatigued, you're blowing, you're at breaking point, and he might send you off the pitch for something you didn't even do, and it's all about, in the heat of the moment, not reacting and doing, going and standing on the side of the pitch, not kind of arguing your case that you didn't do it. He might just be testing you. So he instills that in the lads, and both on the field and off the field. I'm not sure if that.
We have a similar working environment in the 42. Very similar.
Yeah.
I'm always finding your envelopes on the lid. Anybody else before we wrap up? And gentlemen in the middle here, and more. Good.
Murray or Mike, I need a wild card for my fantasy team for the weekend. Any suggestions across the 6 teams?
Ooh, one of the Welsh boys, I presume, is going to get a couple of tries.
So pick someone that's going to carve up.
Is that what you? Yeah, basically. Load of tries is what you want. Which Welsh guy is going to?
Which Welsh guy? Jeez. You're asking me about backs, I think. I struggle with that. So.
Any suggestions?
George North?
Yeah, George North looked pretty good out.
Georgie.
Yeah. Hadley Parks, yeah, he's been really impressing this championship, hasn't he?
That's a good show.
Good playmaker. Jeez, it's a tough question. I don't have a fantasy rugby team. I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I haven't, so...
Sorry, we're going to disappoint.
That's all good. Anybody else? This gentleman there in the middle.
Hi.
Oh. Hello.
What about Liam Williams? Sorry. Liam Williams. That's a good one, isn't it? Yeah? Liam Williams.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Murray. You've both said that England are going to resource the breakdown much more, which has been really profitable for Ireland. Do you have the antidote? Pretend you're Joe. What's the antidote to that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Joe will have definitely considered that. I think it probably means a bit more line speed for Ireland, because England's whole game plan is going to narrow up. Like that shape, the 2-2-2-2, which Mike mentioned before, is all about keeping a little bit of width. And you've seen them trying to go out the back door with a couple of those screen plays as well, and get the ball to the width. So I guess now when you're putting an extra body into that breakdown, there's obviously less options on their feet, so you come with a little bit more line speed. I think they're going to be very selective in attacking those rucks. You know, maybe in the past Irish sides have been guilty of having really strong jackling players and really going at the breakdown every single time. The decision making now I think is going to be a lot better. Guys like Levy, Peter O'Mahony's very good there, CJ Stander as well, as you mentioned. So I think you'll see more line speed, and I think you'll see a very selective decision making around attacking the ball.
I think you answered it there, Murray.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think if England is sending more to the breakdown to try and make it faster and secure it and make sure they don't turn it over, that's going to mean, you know, England have got less players to attack. So that means that Ireland can get, you know, more width in their defence and, as you said, generate more line speed and get up in their faces and you know, put pressure on them and, you know, force them to make errors. So
like, that's one of the really interesting trends with Ireland's defence, and probably overall in rugby in general. Like, everyone wants to have bodies on their feet. 13 men in the front line, you're seeing most teams now with just 2 in the backfield, whereas before you probably had the back 3 kind of patrolling that space a lot. So now what you're getting is a lot of double tackles, a lot of wrestling tackles, even more so than before. So even if you're not slowing the ball to breakdown, you're actually slowing the possession in the tackle. You see a lot of slow, long tackles. I think Andy Farrell has probably pushed them to get to kind of get that to a peak as well. So you'll probably see a lot of that, one guy low, one guy high, wrapping the ball, keeping him on his feet, and then the defence can get set even before there's a ruck. So I think that's another advantage of it.
Very good. I think there's a gentleman in the middle here. Yeah. So.
You mentioned earlier on about Lancaster probably cutting a wry smile, given that England still haven't fixed the problems that had come from the World Cup. Given the injuries that Ireland have had in 12 and 13 and the resources that they've put in there now, going into the next World Cup, what's the best combination there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if it was me picking, I'd go Henshaw and Ringrose. I think those two give you a nice combination of physicality with Henshaw, but he can also play a little bit. The two of them are really intelligent defenders, and that's not to slight Bundy Aki, who's been outstanding in this championship for me, fitting into a different role. Like, he's not the player he is for Connacht. He's not that like line breaking, offloading, passing centre. He's more the kind of glue in the midfield, and he's making everyone else's lives easier. Even something like the latch over Conor Murray for that try against Scotland, little details like that, he's hitting a lot of rucks. But I think if you're looking at your best combination, for me personally, I think it would be Henshaw and Ringrose. You have Ringrose's kind of dancing feet and footwork, and I think they'd go really well together, and a lot of upscale still in both players.
Yeah, I'd maybe say Henshaw and Bundy, you know, having worked together at Connacht, they know each other inside out, and, you know, for me, they just, like, Gary's very physical, but those two guys bring huge amounts of physicality. They're very big. They're, you know, Bundy getting over the gain line, and you know, you'd have Gary on the bench, and he's a great guy to come on once, you know, because you have to earn the right to go forward. So to have Bundy and Robbie, who, you know, probably, you know, crash it up and get really good momentum and, you know, hold the defence, keep them honest, and then to bring Gary on with, you know, when guys are a little bit tired and fatigued, to bring Gary on with his, you know, he's got unbelievable feet, unbelievable pace, and, you know, he can do a kind of similar job that Sean Cronin does when he comes on to tie defences.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see Henshaw really enjoying that 13 role. That was all the word coming out of camp. He was enjoying the increased space. He probably doesn't like the perception that he is just a kind of bish-bosh centre. He's got more to his game, and certainly intelligent defender as well. So, like, you've got incredible options. Chris Farrell did really well there as well. So you can kind of mix and match depending on who the opposition is as well. And as we mentioned, Arnold still to come through there. So a lot of talent there.
Super. Anybody else before we wrap?
Yeah, just one
more.
Just over here as well. I thought it was really interesting to say that they had a subs, you know, in like meeting before the game to show like the impact that they had as a team. But like, is there any sort of external kind of coaching they had for, like, you're talking about the pressure, it's high pressure situation, you know, it's not just throwing a ball into a line out, like,
yeah.
But like, is there any other, like, does Joe come into you and kind of manage that kind of expectation that you have of yourself, like that kind of, how do you not like get down on yourself when there's a huge pressure game like this upon you?
Yeah, well, a big part of it, I think it's kind of, you know, Joe brought it in a few years ago, and I think a lot of teams are doing it now, but it's that kind of whole, so we had a sports psychologist working with us, Enda McNulty, so it's all about, you know, we actually had mindfulness put into our schedule. So, you know, like on a Monday, I think it was like a Monday or Tuesday morning, it's like 20 minutes, half an hour where you go in, you lie in a room, some music's played. Jason Cowan, the S&C guy, would be involved in kind of talking to you, getting your breathing going, and it's just a bit of a release, keep you calm, and it's a bit of a timeout, and lets you kind of reflect. And I don't know, I'm not going to pretend I know the ins and outs of it, but yeah, it was in our schedule, and it's a big part. The mental side of it is a huge part, and also is visualization. There was a thing that it was called Mind Gym, which is sitting down, finding it, whether it be in your room, whether you find a quiet little area and trying to get a bit of mind gym in every day, sitting down, sitting quietly for 15, 20 minutes and just, visualizing the play sheet. Like a call's been called, I'm sitting there, I'm visualizing what is my role, what am I doing? The line out off the top, what's my next job? Am I hitting the ruck? I'm cleaning deep, like visualizing exactly what you're doing, visualizing what sounds you're hearing, smells, everything, all the senses. So that is a big part of it.
Excellent. I hope their smells weren't too bad.
Yeah.
So that's it for the questions. We will get your predictions odds in a second, but Mike, I have to ask you to pick a winner. I'll give you the questions because there were a good few. There was, who would you take from the English team to put into the Irish team? There's, how do we avoid being predictable at Rugby World Cup 2019? Anybody from the under-20s ready to make the breakthrough for the next World Cup? Will this Irish team be better at controlling their emotions come the next World Cup? There's a reminder for me here that there are 45 minutes gone in the second half. Thank you very much for that. Who's throwing digs to motivate lads in training? How will England do apart from the disciplinary standpoint? A wild card for my fantasy team. Sorry, mate. If England resource to break down more, how do Ireland combat that? Jesus Christ, is that Ireland's best 12-13 combo? And finally, how does Joe manage the expectation of pressure?
I've made a decision, guys, and I feel it has to be ladies first. So your question, I think,
Mike,
was,
well done.
Yeah, Mike, yeah. So the second question, the prediction of
the World Cup.
Excellent, yes.
the next World Cup, I think. So
well done.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey,
well done.
Come up and receive your award.
Oh yeah.
Well
Good
done.
job.
There we go. Well done. Yeah, well done. Good question.
Well done.
Thanks.
Well done. All right, lads, we better wrap before we get locked in. Very quickly, Murray, I'll start with yourself. Are we going to do it?
I've been wavering all week forward and back. Before the championship, I would have said that England would have won this match. I'm still slightly leaning that way. I think Ireland have unbelievable momentum coming into it, but I just could never foresee England losing 3 games in a single championship. I know it's not popular, but that's how I feel. I think they're going to nick it with a late score.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, I think we'll win. I think whatever the situation is, we'll find a way to win. And hugely exciting. But I generally do think we'll win. 2 years ago it was very close. It came down to the wire, so it will be close. But full belief in we'll find a way to win.
What do you reckon, guys? Win. Lose. Who said it? All right, folks, thanks a million. That is all we've got time for. Our thanks to Volkswagen, our sponsors. A reminder about the green chair in the back there. Terrific prizes on offer. And even if you just take part and you tell a story, you'll get a copy of our book as well. But thanks a million for joining us. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game. Enjoy Ireland winning the Grand Slam. Enjoy Ireland winning the Rugby World Cup next year. It's all going to happen. Cheers. Thanks a million. And can I just hear it one more time for the man Murray Kinsa and also our special guest tonight, Mike McCarthy. Great job, buddy. Bye.
Could I just say one thing? Thank you very much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I've had a lovely evening and I've really enjoyed myself.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Thank you. You're the first person to ever say that, so I appreciate it. Cheers, Mike.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.